Welcome to the September 18th work session meeting of the Abingdon Town Council. I want to thank you all for coming out to the meeting. I don't believe I've ever seen this many people at a work session. It doesn't look too exciting to me, but I guess it's something that you're all concerned about. And I applaud you for showing interest in your government. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Bradley,
Here.
Ms. Quetch. Here. Mr. Webb,
Here.
Ms. Patterson. Here. And Mayor Craig.
Here. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Will you please come forward to the podium as I call your name? Restate your name, state your address, identify any organization you represent. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for comments. Each speaker will be limited by the town clerk once your comments begin, and you will be given a cue when 1 minute of speaking time remains. Speakers are reminded that neither council members or staff will address questions or otherwise engage with speakers during the public comment period. Our first speaker tonight is Amber Fiorini.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm impressed you got my last name right. I have to say.
I'm an impressive guy sometimes.
Yeah.
My wife does.
Tonight, you were on point.
That's
Good
what
evening,
we're-
council members, Mayor Sullivan.
Just last name, that's all.
That's it. I'm like, I'm Chief Sullivan, but we found out now that's not your first name, so. I'm here to speak about, my name's Amber Fiorini. I live at I'm just gonna say Barter's address. I work for Barter Theater, which is right next door, 127 West Main Street. I'm the Director of Sales and Services there. So essentially, the 165,000 people we get through our doors every year, my job is to make sure that they're happy. And one thing I know they're not happy about is our parking. Not only our parking, but also the accessibility that they have, the trouble that they have leaving, coming, the issues that tour buses have, and also the complaints that we have from our patrons in regards to handicap accessibility. That's one of the biggest ones that we get all the time. I actually have a letter here. I'm not going to read it, but I'll make sure you all get a copy of it. I have multiple letters from patrons. Last week, this person, one of our employees, actually had to drive their vehicle for them and park because they have handicap accessibility and they had nowhere to park. So it's a big issue, people stopping in front of Main Street, including tour buses right in the middle of Main Street to load and unload. Obviously, we are for this. I'm for this. Barter Theater is for this. And our preference is option 1, if you all want to hear that. And I won't take any more of your time. So thank you all for listening. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Addressing us.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Erica Ramey.
Thank you all for giving me a chance to say what I have to say. So I work at Barter as well. I'm the group sales manager there, and so at least 75% of my job is to make sure that we have tons of motor coach dollars coming into our community. And one of the major, the only complaint that I ever have from a tour operator or a bus driver is parking issues. And loading and unloading. And so I'm with Amber, I think that option 1 would be very beneficial to Abingdon, not only to Barter, but I think that if we could offer some solutions to these motor coach operators, we would be more likely to have them come into town, which in most cases can mean 3 days and 2 nights in hotels and restaurants, not just at Barter. And also the bulk of folks who travel on those motor coaches are elderly, and as Amber said, there's a lot of issues with them having a place to safely and effectively load and unload their passengers, so that would definitely be beneficial to, I think, all of us. So I know that some of the issues that I have heard just while being here tonight with some of the parking plans is that there are folks who feel as though parking the buses on College Street and leaving them running during the performance poses an issue for the residents within that area. But there's absolutely a way that we can put as a contractual agreement that they have to turn those buses off if they have them parked in that area. So that's just one of the ways I feel that we could kind of have an open discussion about resolving some of the issues that people have with this. So, thank you all so much for your time.
Do we need, excuse me just a minute, do we need their addresses?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Barter's address, 127 West Main Street.
Do we need a living address or just, is that okay?
Is that okay?
Right,
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Rick Harmon.
I also work for the Barter Theater. My main job is if you come to the theater, I show you where to park. And I deal with the buses day in and day out that I'm there. The charter buses is the only problem I see, because I send the school buses out the back and have been for 5 or 6 years. They go down to Pecan Street, and if we're going back south, they can come up to the light there. If they're going north, I send them on up to the fire department and come out right there across from the rain. The only problem with a charter bus is making the turn right there at the corner of the Barter parking, going there on, what is it? Park Street, right there, right there, that curve, because it's hard either way they go. If they go out, I see they go out the front now, but if they go out the back, either way it's hard. That's the main thing I see. Most of the time, the buses will come in and I show them where to park. That's the main thing I have. Like I say, I deal with the parking lot and all of the patrons and try to make it easier for them. I know we don't have that much handicap, but I try to find a way to park them if you've been there. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Next speaker is Steve Jett. We, remember the rules, Steve. No, I haven't been enforcing them, but we probably ought to obey the rules. Tell me who you are and your address and all that stuff.
I'm Steve, or Stephen Jett. I live at 333 Court Street here in town. And I noticed in the agenda that there was an item regarding the noise ordinance. That's a specialty of mine. I worked on a noise ordinance in another municipality many years ago. So I thought I'd take any opportunity to throw in my 2 cents, because I think, well, I'll read it to you, and I think that'll express it. I speak in light of my experience in drafting a noise ordinance for another municipality years ago. Although including some useful provisions, the present noise ordinance strikes me as flawed in certain ways. Other than motor vehicle operation behaviors, which I would have thought preempted by state law, the prohibitions in the ordinance apply only to the hours 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. During the daytime and evening hours, citizens remain totally unprotected. Standards need to be set for both day and night times. Standards specified are not adequate. The 50-foot audibility criterion is insufficient in cases of immediate proximity. An additional criterion regarding audibility inside affected closed buildings on other properties needs to be included. Criteria such as, quote, excessive noise, unquote, may be unconstitutionally vague. The exemptions currently provided for require some qualifications, such as that the sound should be no louder than the minimum needed for audience audibility and or decibel limits specified. Standards for town-issued permits need to be further specified. Time of day, duration, sound type, that is speech or music, steady or intermittent, sound level, that is decibel limits for minimizing both noise pollution and eardrum damage. No permits for commercial purposes should be issued in or that would affect residential neighborhoods, schools, theaters, etc. Prudent provision of security should be specified. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next speaker is Jimmy Lou Bowden.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimmy Lou Bowden. I live on 200 Mountain View Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. I've lived in Abingdon most of my 85 years. I love Abingdon. I just wanted to make a request. Please don't make College Street or Church Street one way. Please don't change that. And a little footnote, I hope you will seriously consider giving or selling back to the Summers family, the Summers Law Office. I think they should have that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is David Millsap.
I am David Millsap. I live at 95 Fairway Drive, Abingdon, Virginia, and Country Club. I've lived in Abingdon since '81, and I've lived in Washington County since '57, January 1st when I was born. First of all, I want to say the Barter does need parking, but that's not what I'm here tonight about. Anybody that goes to the Barter knows that there's issues with parking. We don't have ample parking on Main Street for them, and their small parking lot they have across the street doesn't adequately cover or provide parking for the residents that are here. A lot of the businesses that we see up and down through here have got stuff set where they can't park in there, so that's some of the problems that they have. But I'm here to address another issue tonight, and it is basically the closure of Green Springs Road. My daughter and wife worked at the courthouse, and a lot of people driving from Country Club underneath the interstate of a morning would turn right on Green Springs Road, and they in turn then would bypass the red light that we have up here on Main Street, and it would be a quick exit around town. I have employees, I work at Feeding America here in Abingdon, have employees that live at the lake that go to the high school to drop off children. They would come that way and go the same way. With the closure of that road, it has created an additional 5 minutes on this lady getting your child to school of a morning. I've come up with a solution for that. I'd love to see Green Springs Road opened back up. And I actually made some pictures today, and I'll give these to you all here you can see. But what I'm concerned about is on Main Street here in Abingdon. If we look at Main Street and Cummings Street, we've got 2 lanes that go directly forward up to Valley Street. You can turn left on the left lane to go west into Abingdon, or you can turn right to go east into Abingdon. If they were to change the traffic pattern on that right lane to where it was a right turn only, it would stop some of that traffic that is backing up sometimes as far as Kroger, because there's both lanes going up to Valley Street. It would allow people to turn right on red there at that light, or when the light is green, it would allow them to immediately come through, which would solve some of the problems. It would be great, again, if Green Springs Road was open. I made some pictures today. It lacks about 6 feet of being up to the road that Food City has done. I applaud Food City for what they're doing with the meadows and that complex there. That's not what I'm here about. I know that their trucks come down Green Springs Road and come by Ms. Patterson's house that come in, because that's virtually the only way they come in. When you see these pictures here, you'll see that they're virtually coming right down that road now, with the exception of tying it into Cummings Street, which I'm not an engineer, don't know anything about paving, but it looks to me like, from what I'm reading in the newspaper, that facility, the complex, is not going to be open until April of 19. So we've got about another year and 6 months to deal with Green Springs Road being closed and additional traffic up on Main Street. So if we can't get that road open, I asked the town council to look at possibly changing the traffic pattern there on Cummings Street and Main Street. I think it would make a lot of sense. You all are very intelligent individuals. If you've sat there in the lane of traffic and seen what I'm talking about, it ties up both lanes. If it was turned to the right, I think it would solve some of the problems. I'll leave these pictures with you all that you all may see. I appreciate your time and hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you,
for
Mr. Millsap.
volunteering today.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Linda Summers Gill.
Hello again, everybody. My name is Linda Summers Gill. My address is 15448 Briarwood Lane in Abingdon. I'm here this evening to participate in a continued discussion about the status and decision being made about the Summers Law Office. I have a letter from my cousin. I'm going to read a brief part of it that he asked me to read. It starts, "My name is Derek Preston Dutcher. I am the grandson of Louis Preston Summers, the nephew of Andrew Rowan Summers, and the son of Olivia Summers Dutcher. I've been made aware that the town of Abingdon is contemplating disposing of the Summers Law Office, which is located at the corner of Court Street and Plum Alley. This property was donated to the town by the heirs of Louis Preston Summers, with me acting as the sole designated heir and agent in the transaction. This donation was made with the explicit good faith understanding the building would be restored and retained by the town as a historic building. I've worked with 2 consecutive mayors in my efforts to see that the family's wishes would be honored." And I'll provide, I didn't bring copies, but I'll be sure to get a copy of this. The end of this letter is requesting that the council provide an accurate accounting. We heard some numbers about the expenses involved in maintaining, but we didn't hear of any other monies that were involved in leasing or in renting the property or the availability for the town to have use of it. We're hoping in his last statement that some sort of reasonable understanding and agreement may be reached with the town certainly and the family. I've given some more thought to this situation that we're in, and this little postage stamp of the Summers Law Office in Abingdon has been an important part of the town's cultural heritage. Built in the early 1800s, the Summers family established themselves here in the late 1700s. I'm not sure who decided and why the decision was made for the town to sell the property. Apparently the family over the years had been working closely, anticipating that this valuable asset, not monetary asset, but a cultural asset to the town, could be used wisely, provided as a museum for education. I think in one of the comprehensive plans it describes the property with a potential use as a learning center or have some value. Something else I thought of, and I'll be brief on this, sold to another entity. There's no way that the town can protect this property if it's sold. It could be torn down. It could be used for parking. And it's my understanding, as I'm sure that you feel the same way, that there needs to be a just, right, and reasonable conclusion to help all of us preserve this little bit of our history. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the public comments we have tonight. Next item on the agenda on the reports from interim town manager is discussion regarding the retiree insurance stipend, and I believe Ms. Reichler is going to tell us about that.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Last Thursday, each of you should have received an email from Chuck Banner briefly outlining information that has been provided to us by our auditor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass it over to Tamara so that she can do her presentation for you. And if you have any questions while she's doing her presentation, please feel free to ask. And once she's done, we'll have kind of a Q&A just so we can make sure that we're all on the same page, okay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Tamara Greer. I'm a CPA partner with Thrower Blanton Associates.
and we are the firm that the town engages to assist with the preparation of their financial information so that it can then be audited. We're currently working on the June 30th, 2018 information, and during that process, we were made aware of a health retiree stipend that the town has been paying for several years, and under new governmental standards, which we'll get into briefly, that's required to be calculated and included in your financials depending on how that is handled. So we're going to give you an overview of kind of the information. I'll be glad to take questions. It can be a little complicated, but I'll try to be brief. So you should have copies of what I'm going to do on the PowerPoint. So, and feel free if you want to ask questions during or after, I'm fine with that. When we were looking into the information, currently the town is paying a stipend to the retirees. It's paid $40 per month, which is a total of $480 annually, and it's paid in installments, quarterly installments of $120. Okay, the retirees receive the stipend regardless of whether they choose to stay on the health insurance. Your retirees can choose to stay on the health insurance. And it's 100% their payment, but they have that option. But even if they don't stay on the health insurance, they still get this stipend. It's paid for the life of the retiree, and it was started with a resolution by council according to our research in 1993. And the only exception we can find to this is currently your law enforcement retirees who are eligible for LEOs don't receive this. This falls under what we call OPEB, and I am not going to go into a dissertation on OPEB. Everyone would fall asleep, so I'm going to be brief, but you need just a little understanding of what it is. OPEB is other post-employment benefits, and governments are coming under the same standards that Enron and WorldCom and all the big companies. It's trickled down to governmental. So now we're having to include all of this information in your financial statements. So basically, OPEB is anything you pay your retirees outside of a pension, primarily medical, dental, vision. So this actually falls under whether you pay it to an insurance company or pay it directly to the retirees. And we're currently talking about what you all pay directly to the retirees. Short enough? Can't make it any simpler than that. It's a lot more complicated than that. So what we're doing is presenting you a couple of options. We discussed this with the Director of Finance Office, your Human Resources, town manager, to get their input. There are some options for you to consider on how this will affect your financial statements for June 30th of 18 and going forward. So option one is you could, and we've actually got some input from your legal counsel as well, you could discontinue what you're offering currently. That would be as of July 1 of 18, so we would stop it effective for the June 30th, 2018 financial statements. You can stop it for all current retirees receiving it, as well as any future retirees. This has no effect on what we would be putting in the financials currently. You currently offer some medical, the retirees the option to stay on the town's medical. And that is a liability that equates to the $786,846 that we're referencing here, okay? That's not going anywhere unless you change those. So, but if you did away or discontinued what you're offering now for all retirees and current employees, then we would have a zero effect on the June 30th, 2018 financials. Now, your auditors may potentially have some control findings because we just became aware of this and it's been done for a while. Your other option to consider is you can continue offering the health stipend for the retirees who are currently receiving it. And currently you have 39 retirees. We obtained that list from your human resource. And so they're receiving the payment quarterly, so there's only 39 of them. So if you chose that option, then for the June 30th 18 financials, you actually have a projected increase of about 30 to 40% in what that liability is going to be on the books. And again, without going into a whole lot of detail, it's like adding additional debt. It goes in the same section as a debt as if you borrow money, this liability does. And that would increase it from the $786,000 to somewhere between 1 and 1.2 million. I had your actuarial, who's already provided the information you have, give me an estimate of what that change would be. And the actuarial has, it's not an exact number, but it is an estimate, okay? And more than likely, your findings will be more significant because in your audit, because of actually going back and picking up something that has existed for several years, okay? Any questions on that part? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
did this start? You say several years ago?
1993.
It started.
Yes, we started doing research to try to determine
I'm
how it was
sorry.
being offered and who it was.
Okay,
And,
I apologize. I meant, when did this law change?
Oh, putting OPEB in. Actually, it's a governmental standard, originally under governmental standard 45 that went in 2010. The standard this year, it's always been a footnote disclosure since 2010, and you've been gradually putting a liability on over a 30-year period. For this year, this standard is changing. It's under standard 75, and instead of putting it on incrementally, we're gonna put the whole thing on and they've done new valuations to determine what that is. It's gonna be like your pension. I don't do your audit presentation, so I don't know how much you cover on your pension, but there's a huge footnote, very large liability related to your VRS pension liability. Your other post-employment is gonna come like this. So it has existed since 2010 for reporting purposes, but it's actually changing its representation for this year. Okay. Any questions on that part? Okay. So I've given you just a picture. Sometimes I'm better with a word and a picture, so I gave you just a couple of things to look at. This slide is your OPEB liability. It's what, again, the total OPEB liability is being calculated. Option 1, which is to discontinue it, remains, and you can see the column. Your general fund would have $660,951 of this liability, and your sewer fund $125,895, giving you the total of the $786,846. Obviously, your general fund has larger bank of the employees, so it's going to have a larger portion of the liability. Option 2 takes it up to somewhere between $1 million and $1.2 million. I gave you the top end of the range just for picture's sake. And this is if you continue only with the 39 employees that are currently receiving this. So if you can kind of think 39 employees changes our liability this much. Option 2 puts your general fund at $1.8 million of that liability. Your sewer fund at $192,000 for a total of $1.2 million. That's an overall increase of about $414,000 in that liability. Again, this represents like a debt on your financials. Now I have put my caveat at the bottom. Option 1, the numbers are from the actual actuarial report that we've already received from a company named Milliman. So these are the numbers they've calculated it to be without including the stipend. They will redo this depending on your choice, and these are projections. Option 2 is their projections. Now you have something in your financials called unrestricted net position. It's kind of your financial health, if you will. It encompasses, you do a budgetary basis, which is cash. This projection is actually the one that includes assets and debt, okay? So when I say unrestricted, that means basically what you have, easiest way to say it is liquidity. If I wanted to say how much cash could we get out after we paid all the debts, sold all the assets, not an actual, but that's the best way to equate this. So option 1, you have unrestricted net position if you discontinue that stipend at a total of $4,843,19. If you go with option 2, it drops to $4,429,865. So we reduce our liquidity, and the general fund is the one that concerns me most if you're looking at this. Option 1, you're at a little over 1.6. That's where you are now. If you continue for the retirees and we add this liability, then that general fund net position goes to 1.3. So we reduce our financial picture from what's available, okay? And you can kind of think of that, if this is, you all have somewhere between, on a basis, $9 million to $12 million in operational revenues, depending on operational revenue expenses, depending on where you are, whether you're on a cash basis or what we call the accrual basis. So think of it as how much percentage of that is what we actually expend during the year. So how much do we actually have available? You don't want that to continue to come down. Your bonding agencies, your lending agencies, your grantors look at this as part of your overall health. I kind of did one last thing. It's kind of the graph, and this is how it affects your net position. Option 1, which is the first part, to discontinue the stipend. The blue represents the OPEB liability, and the orange represents your unrestricted net position. So you can see under option 1, if you discontinue, then it looks like a reasonable portion of net position. If you go to option 2, you can see how much a larger percentage that liability becomes of your overall net position of your financial health. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, an audit report's a lot more complicated than this. We're trying to put it in summary form. You have some additional things to consider if you choose option 2, which would be to continue for the existing retirees. Your actuarial report, which has already been completed and paid for, you're gonna have some cost. It'll have to be redone, because we're gonna have to get the exact dollar figures. They've given us an estimate to redo this, and they have not provided the information unless that's changed as to what that cost is going to be. And then you also have some time involved. Your audit report, you are reporting under the Auditor of Public Accounts for the state of Virginia, and your audit report is supposed to be to them in final form by November 30th. The actuarial will have to take the information, and it's gonna take them several weeks at best to redo this. They're gonna have to get it to us so that we can draft it in the draft year financials. And this is something like a 20-some page footnote with this affects, as well as entries. And then we have to get that to your auditors, and that all has to happen well in time for them to present that to you all by November 30th. And this is the end of September. So just food for thought. I'm good, but I'm not that good. Some other considerations which did come to light as we were researching this, and I think we just got some final information yesterday and today, and I will let them go into a little bit more. They have determined that VRS actually has some options, which I did know about. It's called health insurance credit. And the provisions of that actually mirror what this resolution that we read in 93 probably set out to do to start with. But it's $1.50 for eligible retirees for years of service, and they can get up to a maximum of $45 a month. Now, your active employees, the ones that are eligible, have to have at least 15 years of service in order to be eligible for VRS. And it's applicable for both existing retirees as well as future retirees. So currently, if we just looked at an annual cost for this, 39 retirees who get the $480 annually cost you about $18,720. Now, I've looked at your retirees, the upcoming retirees, for various things, your vacation and sick time, as well as this. You have several more people eligible to retire in the next few years, so this number's gonna keep going up, okay, if you continue to offer this. So, but currently you're paying $18,720. If you chose to go with the option for the VRS health insurance participation, they have actually quoted them that the current and future retirees would be at a cost of about $14,325 annually. So you have some savings there if you wanted to consider that. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. Like I said, they have to have 15 years service. And for the retirees that you currently are paying, yesterday we looked, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, 21 of the 39 retirees actually had the 15-year service that would make them eligible to receive this. So, and I know that's quite a bit of information to absorb. We did try to send you guys a preliminary memo to kind of give you an overview of this. I'll be glad to take any questions, and or I'll be glad to let Stacy and Chuck do whatever they need to do.
I do have one question for you. Do you know about how many we have up in several more years to retire roughly?
They could probably tell you exactly. Now, I remember looking at this 2 years ago with the exact number when I was looking at your vacation and sick. At that point in time, there were up to 27 eligible to retire. Now, I couldn't tell you how many of those were law enforcement, and a few of those have already retired and left. So, but I know we looked the other day, there were even possibly 7 in this current year that were coming up.
I think one of the things you just need to keep in mind when looking at this is VRS offered this option as a reason. And why, I don't have a crystal ball. I wasn't here in 1993. I don't know why they chose to go with their own plan. But what this does is basically allows VRS to manage this program. Not only does it help the, the 21 that we can go back there, the 39 people that's getting it now, 21 would still qualify and would get their money directly from VRS. But it also impacts all your future retirees. It gives them something where they didn't have nothing going forward. Because what we're looking at is either stop with the 39 or, go to the VRS plan where it will impact all future retirees that have at least 15 years of credible service, and that service can be combined. They could work 10 years for the school board and 5 years for the town. It equals 15. They get the health care. It's not Leo's by any stretch of the imagination, but it is helping your future retirees with health insurance credits they would see on their VRS monthly amount. Plus, we're saving money. It's a quarter of 1% spread over whatever. So it's 14,000 and whatever Tamara said, 300,
325.
something in that neighborhood, which we're already spending 19 on just 39 people. You could spend 14 and affect a whole larger population.
and you'll still have, even if you choose the VRS, you'll still have some impact on your liability overall, and I haven't seen those numbers yet. But this, the way it is set now, because it's in actual dollars, everybody, like the retiree and the VRS plan, we set it differently, you're paying as you go. The liability can go exponentially on with the past two right now.
We chose to go with this VRS program, would it affect our deadlines? Would it be easier for us to integrate into the current?
Just to use the VRS deadline, the basically the paper resolution by you all, and me continuing the VRS basically to notify all the folks that it's impacted that have retired in the past, that they are now eligible for this new credit, and it shouldn't affect the deadlines whatsoever as
So
far as.
the
Because
actuarial
you would be
part.
making your decision, if
Yeah.
I'm understanding him correctly, to say, as of June 30th, we're not offering what we currently
Okay,
are.
so
We're
would
gonna move
it
the VRS.
affect us?
The numbers I have now will stay there. At that point, we'll have a disclosure saying you discontinued what you were offering,
Okay.
and then the new offering will then go into next year's actuarial.
Excellent.
And would it be fair to ask this question, do you have a recommendation for the council?
My recommendation is let VRS manage it. That's what they're good, that's what they do.
They're the experts in that.
Yeah, they do it. And I think it was good intentions back in 1993, so I'm not saying anything disparaging. What I'm saying is that, you know, VRS, they manage this for hundreds of thousands of employees instead of 39.
I was here in 1993, sitting there on the back row like any good town employee would be. And I remember looking at somebody saying, why would they do that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I didn't understand it then. I still don't understand it now. I accept the checks.
Yeah. But yours becomes the VRS.
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really stupid question.
There's no such thing as what my wife said.
The way I read this, it says, option one, discontinue the retiree's health stipend. All current employees, all current retirees, and all future retirees. Why do we have a liability if we do that?
Because you still offer, the liability currently, the $786,000, comes from the fact that you offer retirees the option to remain on the town's health insurance plan. That's something different than this additional
Oh,
payment
okay,
you're making,
okay,
okay? So we already have the $786, I can't wave a wand and make
Okay,
that.
so
one
that's
big,
an
but I can-
entirely different
Yeah,
type.
Yes, sir.
that's
Yes, sir.
factored into a whole different.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Still part of
But so
the
you have a
number.
liability,
I got
we
you, I got
can
you.
hold it there, yeah.
I
So
got
you're
you.
saying health insurance for
Yeah,
that?
yeah, it's.
Because
it
when you
all
said
adds up together.
that, I wasn't sure either whether that was health insurance or whether that was.
That's
But you say you don't know what effect it would have. I'm concerned about the liability.
Yeah,
But you don't know what effect it would have on our liability if we go with VRS, is that right?
it will be factored in the VRS.
Well, they
component.
actually they issue two reports. VRS issues one on your pension, because you all participate in VRS, and they actually issue a separate valuation on the health insurance credit. And that's done at the state level, so that it's actually covered. There's no additional cost to you to pay for that actuarial report. But no, we do not have an estimate. I do know by talking to the current actuarial, it would be less because the way the VRS does it, it bases it on life expectancy. You may offer that, it's offered up to a certain age. I believe you'd have to get the specifics, whereas what you're doing now is 100% till they die.
Till they die.
Yes.
Could we get a report before we commit to the VRS? Is that possible?
Probably not. I mean, it wouldn't go in, it would be in next year's VRS calculations is when they would do it. They wouldn't even do it for this year. I mean, because they're just gonna look at it as, you know, they completed the portion on the pension. If we've not opted into that program, so there's no reason for them to make that calculation.
And I hate to press you for a decision. I mean, we're not gonna make a decision tonight. Obviously, this is a work session, but we need a decision at the next council meeting. This needs to be on the agenda, and it's gotta be resolved this next council meeting, because it's holding up what they need to do. We've got to dispose of this in 2 weeks.
One last question. With the VRS, explain to me just briefly how does it cost per employee? Is that how they arrange a cost, or is it a fixed cost? Is it a percentage?
The way the VRS works now, it's a percentage spread across all employees, all
Okay.
full-time employees.
Okay, all right. I
So,
got you.
for instance, when we enacted Leo's for the police department, it wasn't just that 4% increase wasn't just passed along to the police department. It was passed along to all 135 full-time employees. Same thing would be on this only, but it's 0.26 of 1%.
That's what I thought I understood.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Gotcha.
it's minimal.
Okay.
Questions? I knew that I'd find somebody in the room who knew what was going on.
You're looking at me?
Well, at least you were here when it happened.
Well, yeah. And I said, why would they do that? And I still don't know, but, so you're telling us that we can shift this all off to VRS?
Yes.
And be done with it?
That's correct.
Well,
Resolution is.
well,
Yes.
Now, like Tamara was just saying, we do have 39 retirees that are currently on the plan. With the VRS option, you have to have 15 years of service in a VRS covered position. So only 21 of the current retirees would qualify for that. So it is gonna impact 18 people. But we have to look at the overall picture.
We can go ahead and get VRS would have a draft resolution, I'm sure.
VRS has already
I've
seen
already
it.
And so we can,
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying of the 39, if we go to VRS, there are, of the 39, 18 employees will be just cut out of this
Correct.
$45 a month.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And in all honesty, some of those folks, when we look at years of service, I mean, they were only here like 2 or 3 years and they were receiving a stipend. I mean, there really wasn't that, invested into the town as much as somebody like Mr. Bradley, he was, he drove 20 plus years.
forever.
Forever. He was here forever.
liked it so much you came back. We can go ahead and get a draft resolution, in your council packet, as it comes out for you to consider if you're leaning the VRS way. But we will have to finalize this.
Okay, council,
Thank you, guys.
I gather we have no
Thank you.
choice but to put this on the agenda for the next meeting. The purpose of this work session is to, one of the purposes is to establish the agenda for the regular meeting. So you want that on the agenda?
Please.
Okay. All right, Kim, put it on the agenda. Okay, the next, thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Number 2 is the monthly update regarding the community development, Tanya Triplett.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I've asked Ms. Triplett to start preparing a report for you. Had some questions concerning, certainly not concerning what she does, because she does a whole lot. My problem is I don't think people know how much she does, and I think this would be a good opportunity for you to hear some of her initiatives and to see some of the things that she's done in the last few months, especially as far as economic development.
Thank you for allowing me the time this afternoon. I've actually started making a list of some things, and I was quite impressed. And until you get them all on one sheet of paper, it doesn't really seem like it's a big deal. But in the last 3 or 4 years in Abingdon, we have had the old gas station across from Zazzy's bought, renovated. The tanks have been removed. It is beautiful. 343 designs are in there now, custom cabinet and design shop. Fuji Japanese Express down by Hardee's was an old gas station. Those tanks have been removed, and now it is a wonderful little restaurant. We have the Chevron station beside of Front Row Music that has been purchased, and the tanks were removed from that old gas station as well. And probably the last garage and gas station is Chef Heather's, and we can all very well see the visible difference in that building. We also have renovation of the Bank of America building on Main Street. So in just a few months, First Community Bank will be moving across the street to that building. We have Salt of the Earth, which is the salt room that used to be beside of Abingdon Opticians, purchased the Bundy building across from the post office. She's renovating that. There's a ribbon cutting for her business September the 28th. Comfort Inn and Suites, which was originally the Holiday Inn Express, did some renovations on their building. Bella's Pizza and Subs has added some rock facade to the front of their building, looks really nice. We have new construction of Beef O'Brady's beginning very soon at the Abingdon Cinema. The Historical Society of Washington County purchased the building across from Highlands Union Bank. They've renovated that, and we have a new tenant actually moving into part of their building in October. We have a new owner of the William King House and the property on the corner of Court and Main that houses Shady Business, T. Tilly, Persnickety, Easterly Coleman, and it's my understanding that there's going to be some housing put in above that on the second floor of that building. The Sam Sneed building, which is on the corner of Main and Cummings, adjacent to Ellis Soda Shop, has done some renovations in his building. He had larger spaces. He has now divided that out. Persnickety moved from Courthouse Hill into one of those spaces, and there's a children's clothing store there called Pretty Little Things. He does have 1,500 square feet additional retail space and 1,500 square feet of storage in the back. So we're trying to help him find some folks there. We have some facade improvements in downtown. So you have Wolf Hills Antiques, Zephyr's Antiques, and Potter's Abingdon Opticians. Wolf Hills Antiques on the second floor has office space that they rent, and then they have two apartments also in that building. The Lane Group bought the doctor's office on Valley Street where Dr. Knuckles and Dr. Pennings, I believe, was at one time, and they have an engineering firm there now. We have Mama Mia, who is in the old Starving Artist building, and he created a new outdoor dining space there. Gibson's Garage did a little bit of work on that Goodyear building that he is in. Wolf Hills Brewery remodeled the Ice House and purchased the Quisenberry property adjacent to them for some parking and expansion. We had Food City donation of the Trigg Street building to the Barter Youth Academy. We had Joel Jerkins at JJ's buy the old Dunkin' Deli building. It was renovated and now houses Papa Tom's Cantina. Highlands Glass purchased the old 84 Lumber building, and they also rent a space to Iron Mountain CrossFit. Southern Culture, which is a Nate Breeding's produce business, is now in the old Allison's building. There are 5 properties at the very end of Valley Street that were unoccupied. They are all being renovated or have been renovated. So there's 5 of those. We had 149 Suites bought that building. She renovated the building, and then she got very innovative in putting a vending machine in, so you can go by and pick up desserts about any time you want to now. White Birch Juice building has, they're on the ground floor, and then there's 2 apartments upstairs. We have Bird Properties, who owns the building just up the street from the treasurer's office where Magnolia Home Furnishings is. They are on the bottom floor, and there are 4 units upstairs for living. The Bundy building on the corner, which Morgan's, is open on the first level. They have small office space on the second level, and then the top level has two apartments in it. Lights Mill was now the antique barn. We had Cutting Up, who moved from the Food City Shopping Center with the car wash. They renovated a building on Main Street. They were a Washington County Business Challenge winner and moved to that space and combined with another salon. And we have the In-Towner Hotel, who underwent some renovations. So those are just some of the things that's happened with renovations and purchases of buildings. And then we started looking at new businesses. So I've listed those out. We have Playdate, which is an indoor playground for 10 and under out at the Charwood shop. Initial That and Southern Roots. Initial That is a monogram business, and Southern Roots is a salon, and they're both in the In-Towner, the old In-Towner Hotel. We have Build-A-Basket, who does custom gift baskets. She is across from the Dairy Queen. We have Morgan's on the street level. They're on Main Street. We have Greco's, who moved into the old Ellis Soda Shop building. Candyland is next door. Nails on Main is right next door to Zazzy's. We have the Moonflower Montessori School, Royal Oaks Pediatric, Secure Trust. Persnickety went to that larger space. Right beside the office place, we have Farmhouse Primitive and Antiques. I've listed Mama Mia's as a new business. Our new hotel was Fairfield Suites, Country Boy Seeds, Peak Therapy Services, Papa Tom's Cantina, First Chiropractic, M&M Entertainment, Uncaged Bird Ladies Consignment Shop is up at Lights Milling. We had Appalachian Drafting. Appalachian Drafting was a Business Challenge winner. Part of his winnings for the Business Challenge was half-price rent at the incubator. He went to the incubator and stayed for his year. He has now incubated out, and he is in the Comcast building across from Ferris Funeral Home on the 2nd floor. As part of the Business Challenge, he had to create one job. It could have been his job. He has created 5 jobs, 5 full-time jobs, so he's really doing well. Hobo Hostel is a hostel over on Mink Place. It was a Business Challenge winner as well, and he has spaces for rent there, smaller rooms, for $29.95, I believe, a night. And then we have Jamie Barger, State Farm Insurance. We have 2 new businesses opening up in October and November. The 1st of October, we have Abingdon Emporium and Collectibles, and they will be going into the Historical Society building adjacent to Tim Webb's Travel Shop. Little Downtown Donuts will be in a facility across from True Point Bank on East Main Street. I have several other businesses that I'm working with that's either looking for larger space or relocation options. Some of the projects that we've been working on for the last little bit has been the Best of Abingdon. We had enough money in the budget to supply 28 categories. We had a survey monkey, and we allowed the public to vote in 28 different categories, and those prizes included a garden flag, a window clean, and frame certificates. We did the Open Love Where You Live flags, and we gave those out to locally owned retail restaurants, and we had enough for salons, so we still have some flags left. We just have to make sure that once we have a category, that we have enough flags to supply everyone in that one category. So we will probably be giving out more of those flags soon. We started town-wide merchant open houses. One of the things that I heard when I came into this job is we didn't really do all that much for merchants. So I said if you guys will be open on the Sunday before Thanksgiving and maybe the Sunday before Easter, I'll do the marketing, try to get people in your doors. Those have worked really well. Jamie Barger Insurance and Sprout Consignment partnered up during the Easter egg hunt, and in the little park across from the post office, they gave away prizes and had refreshments. Marketing for that event included live remote from FM 94, and they were at Highland Ski House, the Antique Barn, and in the downtown area. But some of the merchants co-opted in the downtown area went together and bought an extra hour for FM 94 to be in the downtown area. Worked with Kevin Worley and his group. We got some playground equipment in the park, which is now Lois Humphreys Park, and we have plans once the wall. There's a little wall back there in the back that's kind of leaning. Once the wall is repaired, we have plans to maybe paint some games on the concrete, hopscotch, foursquare, those kinds of things, so that we can hopefully attract some families to our downtown. I worked with the Public Works Department, and we had a lot of unused pavement near Shady Business, from Shady Business to the mailbox that's there. And prior, we had large mail trucks that would go there to pick up the mail out of those boxes. And we had conversation with the post office, and they said they don't have the larger trucks any longer. It's just smaller. Excuse me. And it takes them about 3 minutes to get those trucks and get the mail out of there. So we were able to put in a loading zone, which I think will be very helpful for be very helpful for the gentleman who's bought the building now. It could also be helpful for older folks who may be taking lamps in for repair at Shape Business. Excuse me. I usually don't have any problem talking for a long time. So last Saturday, we did the very first Abingdon Townwide Yard Sale. We asked people to fill out permits just so that we could make a list and we could put out a map so people would be able to find them. We did have 85 people fill out permits. We made a map. Some of the suggestions that we've had after we've had it, of course, the weather was kind of up in the air. It was good here, but we weren't sure about it. But some of the suggestions that we have had, if we make this an annual event, is to maybe create an app or a Google overlay that would actually take people directly to homes. So, and more signage. That was one of the things that we heard too. There were assumptions that the yard sales were only on Main Street and that Main Street would be closed, and that is not the case. So we probably have to do just a little bit more education on what our vision was for this event. I did talk to several who had yard sales in neighborhoods, and some had very good days and were very pleased with the amount of folks who found their locations.
Just an aside, my wife sold the furniture outside and the furniture inside that was not for sale. And I had to deliver. So thanks, Tanya, for all the extra work you created for me.
You're welcome. I've been working on a Park Street committee, and we've been working in conjunction with part of the Urban Pathway. We came up with the idea that being we are trying to promote ourselves as bike friendly, that we would get together some old bike wheels or bike forks, and we would do a yarn project. So Janet Woolline has a beautiful bike that has been all decorated in the yarn on the porch of her business already. But we have some of the civic clubs who are working on those decorations. So it'll be, I think, be really nice and unique to see those placed along that urban path. We have been working with, I worked with Kathy Lowe at the incubator with an EDA consultant, so he came into town in August. We took him on a fam tour of not only Abingdon, but we went to Glade and Damascus and some of the industrial parks in the county. And he is coming back to Abingdon with his report to all the elected officials, county and town, IDA, EDA, so we hope everybody will be able to be here for that, and that is September the 27th. I decided that maybe some of the monies that I have could be used for a facade program that did not include people in the Main Street footprint. So Main Street has services and grants available that are only available if you are inside her footprint. So the people who sit outside of those footprints are not eligible for any grant monies. So I have dedicated $10,000 out of my budget, and I'm going to try to do four, and it would be a $2,500 match. So the business owner would have to put in $2,500, or they would have to spend $5,000. They would bring us their receipts if they're chosen. They would bring us their receipts. EDA would kind of look at those, and then we would reimburse them for $2,500. Wise Solutions has begun operations at the Virginia Highland Small Business Incubator. I've been involved a little bit with United Way. They're doing a youth career expo. So they bring in 4,500 seventh graders from all over the region, and they have an interactive experience with employers from the area. So they're trying to get these kids involved in seeing what is available, what types of jobs are available in the region. It was wonderful last year, so very excited about that this year. It is next week, the 25th and 26th of September, and it is at the fairgrounds. We've been doing a little bit of research since I've been in this position on zones and incentives. And kind of what we've found out is A lot of the zones and incentives and grant monies are no longer available. So we were able, in February of this year, to get the tech park into the enterprise zone. So that is a Department of Housing and Community Development program that does help businesses who want to start up with capital investment and job creation. So the tech park is now in that. Opportunity zones, there's going to be a training at Southwest Higher Education Center on October the 1st from 4 to 5. On opportunity zones, we looked at tourism zones, and there used to be some grant monies available in tourism zones, but what we found out is they've done away with their grant program, but they do still offer low interest gap financing. So, and we can get into that program at any point in time if we see it could be a benefit to somebody that may need it. The hub zones are offered through the Small Business Development Center, and our representative here in Abingdon is Cindy Fields, and her office is at the community college, so we can work directly with her. The Stone Mill Tech Park has also been added to the Tobacco Commission and the Virginia Economic Development Partnership inventory of assets. So we've had the folks from the Virginia Economic Development Partnership down here and took them on tours, so they know now what we have available. I am constantly updating the building inventory list and sharing it with folks that may be looking for properties. And I just wanted you guys to know that most grants today that businesses would be eligible for are tied directly to the number of jobs that will be created, and there is a minimum on the pay. So usually it's a percentage over minimum wage. So, any questions for me?
You've been working hard.
Well, I want to say that I'm impressed too with your list.
You need to spend about an hour with her, just ride down the road, and her phone constantly rings, and it's people wanting space. Can you tell me where this is? I need a bigger building. Do you know if anything? And it's amazing the mental inventory that Tanya has in her head. But the most amazing thing to me is the number of people who call her. You know, if you wonder our shape of economic development, well, she's standing in front of us and she's doing a very, very good job.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
I'm just interested in this. I think it's a good idea for our town if we have people living downtown. How many, do we have people in these apartments that you mentioned where there's space above the business? Do we have?
As far as I know, yes, sir, that they are the ones that are completed, and we have a couple under renovation right now. But yes, the ones that I am aware of are rented.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say on behalf of the town and the council, thank you.
Thank you all. It's a privilege to serve you. Y'all have a good evening.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion regarding appraisal of property and decision to offer to sell the Summers Law Office, Tony Sullivan.
The last time we brought this up for discussion, I think I dropped the ball. I missed a question, and it was specifically, could we in turn negotiate for sale directly back to the Summers family? I have Mr. Cameron Bell, our counsel here, who may have some information for us that may help you reach a decision or supply an answer.
Am I volunteering to come up, or am I requested to?
You're requesting.
Yes.
The statute at issue is something that you deal with all the time. It's something that governs leasing of property, sale of property, and actually acquisition of property that the town has done before, section 15.2-1800. 1800B talks about the selling of property, and under that provision, any locality may sell at a public or private sale or otherwise dispose of its real property, provided that no such property shall be disposed of until the governing body has held a public hearing concerning such disposal. The code section references the Constitution of Virginia, and there's some argument about what public places means under Section 9 of the Constitution, Article 7, Section 9 of the Constitution. But under that provision, 3/4 of the members of the governing body have to vote to sell the property. Whether this is public property or not may be a subject of discussion, but probably the safest thing to do would be to have a 3/4 vote for the sale of that. So is it permissible to sell at private sale? I think the answer to that is yes. Is it advisable to sell at private sale? I think my humble opinion is no. First of all, it has to be a public hearing on that. But in addition, one of the first actions that, maybe the first action that this council took was to engage into a code of ethics. Paragraph 2 of that provision says that the council agreed to place loyalty to the highest moral principles and to the people of the town of Abingdon as a whole above loyalty to individuals, districts, or particular groups. And I think as a body, and particularly the newer members and the older members had this ingrained in them before, but is to be completely open and as open government as this council can be. And I think the entering into a private sale, albeit with some of the heartfelt nature of the Summers family and their history, doesn't outweigh, I think, this council's obligation to conduct business in public and handle it that way. And also, our firm did a title search of this property, and I believe that you all have seen it. And with all due respect to the family, the deeds of record don't bear out the statements by Mr. Ducher. The history of this property is that it was given to the Historical Society of Washington County. There were restrictions upon the Historic Society at that time, but prior to the deeding of the property to the town, the family at the time, which included, I assume, Mr. Ducher's mother, Olivia, is one who actually signed that document. I've not seen any documents that involve Mr. Ducher himself. Relinquished any reversionary rights that they had in the property to the town while it was still in the possession of the Historic Society. And then a few months later, the Historic Society deeded that property to the town free and clear. So there are no restrictions upon this property for the town, to the Summers family, or to anyone else. That did exist in 1969 and arguably to 2008 if the Historic Society had not done what they had agreed to do at the time. I've had no indication that they did not do that up to that time, but as of 10 years ago, there has been no reversionary right back to the family. So that's our research, and some of that was perhaps my gloss on that, but that's the review. So the legal answer is, can you sell it by private sale? Yes. But again, I think my advice would be no, not to.
Let me ask you a question. Make sure I understand this correctly. The Summers family did not give the property to the town. They
Correct.
gave it to the Historical Society.
Correct.
Is that correct? And the Historical Society and the Summers family reached some agreement that the reversionary clause went
So there
away?
was a deed in 1969 from members of the Summers family to the Historic Society of Washington County, Inc. And that deed does have some language in it that required the Historic Society to do certain things. Keep it in historic preservation and make a library and some other things that are listed in that deed. But then that continued on until 2008. And in February of 2008, I assume as part of some discussion with the town that the Historic Society either couldn't or didn't want to maintain it anymore, that it was deeded to the town, but they saw that there was these reversionary language in the deed from the Summers family to the Historic Society, that the Summers family at the time in 2008 relinquished any of those rights.
Okay.
And then there is a separate deed from the Historic Society to the town that doesn't contain any of that language.
So now we own a piece of property, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but now
Sure.
we own a piece of property that the town has no obligation to anybody. It's just like any other piece of property that we might dispose of. Is that
By the
your
deed of,
opinion?
by the deed of record, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Do you have any idea, or does anybody have any idea why the town took the property from the Historical Society? I don't, do you know that?
No, I wasn't involved in it in 2008, so.
Okay. Do you know, Tony?
I do not, no, sir.
I don't know, and of course, we are a record state, and so if someone wanted to impose restrictions on the title to property, the way to do that is to record it in a deed in the courthouse. So
Okay.
that's what we have to go by. There may have been discussions, there may have been other documents that have not been provided, and there may be some understanding that's different. I'm just speculating on that, but the deeds of record, which are the title to the property in the courthouse, do not contain any restrictions.
We could search the minutes before next session if it would be helpful to you. We could search the minutes of the time that we acquired or we accepted, because it had to come before council. So the clerk could do that.
I think that we've looked at that. I haven't looked at it recently, but I don't recall any other further description in those minutes about it either.
No, but I think Mr. Craig was asking why we accept it, and I think because it was just, again, a historic property, especially.
Probably.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I mean, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying correctly. You say private sale, so basically you're saying any kind of real negotiation we have with the family would look unethical towards the council. I mean, essentially is what we're saying.
Unethical might be taking it a bit too far.
Right.
Might
But
be-
shady.
Well,
nonetheless.
just, it might be criticized. I could see that it would put the, you know, as I said, you know, the definite emotion of the property and the family and that sort of thing, it would put that above the rights of everyone else in the town or anybody else who wanted to be involved in this process, above that, and I don't see any reason why the council would do that.
Okay. Just trying to clarify.
So
And
it
of
would
course,
look like we're
in-
discriminating, so to speak.
Essentially.
In a way. And, you know, it would still be, even though it says private sale, the mechanics of that, in terms of the meaning law and that sort of thing would be sort of difficult on top of that too, how to appoint a committee for two people to, I guess, negotiate or authorize Mr. Sullivan to do that and that sort of thing. So it's an unwieldy process. Technically, yes, but in this circumstance, probably not advisable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Tony, the repairs and stuff that we have done on that house took place after after 2008,
They started in 2015.
in 2015?
Yes, sir.
So we have an investment a substantial investment in the property?
Yes, sir. We've got just materials mainly, 2015 to 2018 is $36,405. Most of the work, if not all the work, was done by our own staff. So you know, you could probably add the same amount as labor that was not credited. So you know, you're probably looking at $72,000 to $73,000.
But during that time, was it bringing in any rental from outside sources?
After the repairs were made, at 2015, it went up, or 2016, it went out to lease. I think we were getting $300 a month. And of course, that lease was terminated back in July, which of course triggered this whole discussion.
Right.
Virginia Highlands Festival was in there
yeah.
at the time for the office, wasn't there?
Virginia Highlands Festival had their office there for about 18 months, and then private individual had an art gallery or artisan shop in there. And she, like I said, July she closed up and moved.
Okay, council, what's your pleasure? You want this on the agenda for the next meeting or advertise a public hearing? We had a request from the Summers family, as I understand it, that the gentleman couldn't get a flight out of Florida because of the weather. He could be present at the council meeting and talk to us at the public hearing if we want to do this at the council meeting. So do you want it on the agenda at the next council meeting or not?
Can Mr. Dutcher be here at our next council meeting?
Are you able to answer that, ma'am?
I believe he can be here.
I think we should put it on the agenda.
As a public hearing?
He would,
The public hearing on the agenda. How about you, Donna? You okay?
It's fine.
Okay, okay, will you put that up, the public hearing on the agenda?
We would be advertising, just wanna make sure we're correct, we'd be advertising, the property for sale, cause we need to advertise the public hearing,
Is that
so,
correct?
so we wanna advertise it for sale, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what we intend.
One more thing, if I could add, Mayor. I don't think that this needs to be advertised, but the council probably needs to give some thought as to the mechanism of what a public sale would entail. I think it might be a little unwieldy too, to try to do it like an RFP or an IFB and just say, turn in a bunch of envelopes and we'll take the highest bid. I think it probably needs to be an auction or something where people can
What do
participate.
you recommend?
I think an auction is just sort of procedurally would be the most wieldy way to go, but that's up to council's pleasure.
Okay, we can discuss that after the public hearing. Can we, Tom?
Yeah,
Okay,
of course, we would just, at that point, if you agreed to sale, we would put out an RFP for an auction company, basically,
right,
so,
okay,
yeah,
all right,
we can do that.
okay.
And so we're gonna be, can we go ahead and discuss just a little bit more about the tax money? Is Mr. is it okay if I speak?
Sure.
Okay, I didn't wanna speak out of turn. As Mr. Sullivan spoke earlier, we do have money invested in the house and, labor as well as materials, but we have to understand that that is taxpayers' money. The taxpayers paid that money. We are, to do what's proper and fair for the taxpayers, as well. And that's what I look at, is just being fair. We just, we make sure that we're doing that and do the right thing and do the legal thing, to keep us out of trouble. So
Okay.
that's my
And
opinion.
of course, to your point, the other point is as long as we hold it, there's no tax revenue being generated.
Exactly.
Mayor Craig,
Mayor Craig.
so I understand that I am to advertise a public hearing for the disposal of the property to be discussed. Is that how you would like the hearing?
We want a public hearing on the sale of the
Disposal.
property.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, are we done with that? Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding non-departmental budget memo. Mr. Sullivan.
Back up one if you don't care.
Oh, I checked the wrong one off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I mess up every meeting, you know?
That's okay. I woke up this morning, so.
All right, update regarding negotiation of lease agreement with regard to Fairview Homestead.
I
Tony
did
Sullivan.
meet with the Moores, 2 Fridays ago. Had a very good meeting, and I do want to say thank you to the Moores for their contributions to the town and for basically the historic assets that they provide. We reviewed the original lease, and, of course, Dr. Moore had no flavor for that original lease anymore. He wanted to restrict things. I don't think any of the terms that he wanted are outlandish at all. He wanted to, instead of this 50-year term, which was renewable every 10 years, just look at a straight 5-year term that we would renew both parties, written renewal, 30 days prior to expiration, which was perfectly agreeable. Inclusion of a 60-foot right-of-way to remain open, which that's not an issue. But it came down to, really two questions and it really is a question for council that I couldn't answer. Question one, Dr. Moore's wife, she was just matter of fact. She goes, I just need to understand that do we want this? Is there a flavor for council that we want to continue this? And we discussed, and she referenced, the appreciation for history has changed in our society, and people have, somehow fallen out of love or in love, as the case may be, with historical properties and practices. And of course, this is historic farming, and it's, in many cases, it's heirloom seeds that they have, and that was question number one, which I couldn't answer. And and she was pretty clear that if we've fallen out of love with it, then they would like to just discontinue and find another option. And question two from Dr. Moore, it involved funding, not so much for the property, but his concern was for either Fairview or the Old Glade Tractor Association. And will there be a continued line or continued funding for either of those operations going forward throughout the lease? And we've discussed that, I obviously couldn't make that decision for council, couldn't make that decision for future councils. So this is something that, you're gonna have to somehow reach an appeasement with, and then, let me know which way you wanna go.
In other words, what you're saying is, I think we answered the question one time that we had an interest in the historical farming. I gather the lease is contingent upon us agreeing to fund the Old Glade Tractor Association every year. Is that what you got in mind, or is that what
I'll clarify. That's how I understood it in our conversation, that we were looking for a guaranteed funding stream through either Fairview or Old Glade, but I'll let you clarify. Dr. Moore, would you mind coming forward? Because I'm sorry. Ms. Kingsley won't be able to hear you on minutes.
I guess there are two questions. First, regards to the question of the lease. Are you interested in pursuing leasing this extra property over and above what we've given you? That's question number one. And if you went with the terms. But that in part relates, that property ties into Fairview, historic Fairview, the log house and the acreage we gave you. So another question is, do you want to continue the mission of Fairview? There's a Fairview Foundation that has been organized as a 501c3 that maintains that, looks after it. They have received in the past funding from the town. It was a town 501c3. There were two of them. The town let both of them lapse. So this third attempt, the current Fairview Foundation is sort of separate and independent from the town, but it maintains and oversees your property. And they are dependent upon some funding from the town to take care of your property. Plus all the work that's been done out there recently, really over the past several years, has been done by the Tractor Association that needs some financial support to fulfill their mission, taking care of your property. So we want to know if you want to keep it going. Are you interested in continuing the mission of Fairview? Because that ties in with the lease. If you're not going to do Fairview, why lease the land? So we need to know where you're coming from.
Jim, help me out. I don't remember Fairview ever asking the town council for any funds. Did we do this past budget year and fail to fund it, or did?
Last year they were here. The Fairview Foundation asked for funds. The Tractor Association, Ron
I know about the
Stevenson.
Tractor Association, but Fairview.
They were both here asking. They presented their request.
Well, the Old Glade Tractor Association, prior to, just for information for all you guys, the prior town council, I'm not sure how I felt about that, but the prior town council didn't fund the Old Glade Tractor Association because of our staff didn't renew the lease, so that's why they weren't funded.
Yeah, neither the foundation, Fairview Foundation, nor the Tractor Club were funded.
Yeah, that's what, I didn't remember. But
Both
the
were not
Fairview,
funded for
the
that
Fairview
reason.
Foundation asked for money, then we didn't provide it, is that?
Right,
okay.
correct.
I didn't remember that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, neither one were placed in the budget. We were told by the former management that those dollars were placed into a contingency fund, a council general fund to be used at your discretion, but I don't know that
No,
really
that's
happened.
not right, Jim.
I know that's-
This town council, our contingency fund was set by the previous town council, and there were no strings put on it. I mean, there were no obligations made. It could be considered, but we normally, the town councils in the past have only used those funds for an emergency. We have less contingency this year than we've had since I've been on town council.
That's what I suspected,
Yeah.
but that's what we were told.
Yeah,
back
okay.
in May, when the budget was being done,
So-
and it's an appeasement, I assume.
I have a question. Do you
Yes.
know, or does anybody here in this room know, is there a committee for the Fairview? I thought there was a committee, am I mistaken?
Yeah, it's the Fairview Foundation
The
Committee,
foundation,
yes.
do they still meet?
Yes, as far as I know, they
Okay.
still meet.
But there's no minutes or anything, we don't have any
I don't
knowledge
know
of how often they meet?
Monthly, I think, but I don't know if they provide those to you. Brenda Morrison is president of that.
Who is it?
Brenda Morrison,
Morrison,
she's
okay.
at King University.
Okay. Once a month. Does the old blade tractor have anything they're gonna be doing on that property really soon or anything like that?
Well, they had assumed they'd be getting some financial assistance from the town because they want to build another structure. Last year, they built the blacksmith shop, the log structure of the blacksmith shop, and it's up and running. They're having demonstrations there already. They wanted to build a replica of a general store to be used as basically a museum for the smaller implements and also craft demonstrations.
And we're gonna build a place to make syrup as well.
A fire pit, they've built a fire pit.
I did.
Yeah, but to really make that operational, they have to have hot water and extra bathroom facilities and stuff like that. So they're constricted by lack of funds that they thought they'd be getting.
Jim, I'm not sure that we can, and I don't know, Kim's out there, I'm not sure that this town council could, if you're asking us if we're gonna provide funding for Fairview and the Old Blade Tractor Association for the duration of the lease, I'm not sure we can legally bind future town councils. I don't know that, but I think it'd be hard for us to predict what our situation would be regarding non-departmental.
We understand every 2 years is a different mix potentially on the council.
I'm sorry, Jim, I didn't hear that.
Every 2 years, there's potentially a new mix on town council, we
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
We were talking about this current year, and what this current town council's feelings
You're
are.
asking for just the current year?
Yeah, what is this council's feeling on
Okay.
continuing historic Fairview
Okay. Okay.
and
Gotcha.
a lease? They're all sort of tied together,
I've got you.
because if you're not gonna continue Fairview, you don't need a lease.
Well, I guess an indication of how we feel would be how we would vote on providing some money out of the contingency for Old Blade Tractors.
Or the Fairview Foundation, because
Yep, okay.
We wanna talk about this and get back to Mr.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Jim.
And I appreciate your time, Dr. Moore, and I will say that, at the end, when we concluded our meeting, one of the things that I expressed, I thought that if this council or a future council has a change of heart, I think the property needs to revert back to the Moores or to Old Glade. I mean, if council ever opts to get out of the business, I think, the rightful place for it is to go back to the rightful owner, to keep it together. So, I think you always keep that as the underlying option, not just now, but for years to come. Okay, council, what's your pleasure? Do you want, my personal opinion is we're not ready to vote on this next meeting. Do you want to place it on
The next work session.
the next work section, or?
I think so. Do you all want to do that?
Okay. Kim, will you make sure we do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we can get to what I asked you about before, Tony.
Yes, sir.
Departmental budget memo.
Can I ask, just for a brief diversion, I know we have departmental tours scheduled, and I know there's some conflicts arising. We have to make a phone call to our driver, and I don't want it to get too late. If you all opt to discontinue or to reschedule, I need to make a phone call or get Ms. Triplett
What
to
are you
make a
talking
phone
about,
call.
the reschedule the town tours?
Tomorrow.
All right. It came to light yesterday that I'm not gonna be able to be there because of doctor's schedule appointment that I can't get out of. Cindy's leg is giving her trouble, and Donna had something come up with her husband, so there's 3 members of council.
So we're either gonna rock it out or not.
Look, and if it's just 2 of y'all,
can take my car.
I'm gonna take you
Take
around
my
on my
car.
bicycle is what I'm gonna do. So,
Take my car, and Derek and I'll do it in about a half an hour.
It seems to me if we can't all be involved, that we probably ought to try to postpone it if possible.
Okay.
And I wanted to say that we appreciate this opportunity, and I didn't wanna miss it, but I'm not feeling so good this evening. But anyway, I'm gonna be fine, as far as I know, and I'd like to go myself if that's okay. And, cause I really enjoy talking to the staff and.
well, if what I'm hearing is we don't need a bus, let's cancel the bus. So are we just gonna discontinue the tours for tomorrow totally?
Tomorrow, yes, but can we reschedule?
We could. Now, look, just as an aside, I know all of you won't be here. We had planned on having lunch for you here. Lunch is still being served, whether we go on a tour or not. So if you want to show up at 11:45, hey,
We'd love to have you.
lunch is on us.
Pick me up at 11:30, Al.
I'm sorry for the interruption, but we need to make that phone call.
Okay,
So,
all right.
All right.
back to the non-departmental budget memo. I sent you all an email, I guess it's been about 6 weeks ago, listing non-departmentals and the amounts that they received. And I know there was some initial talk about, non-departmental funding for the upcoming budget year. Just need to know a direction if you want to take any action. I sent you all of the information as far as who was getting what, and we sort of had that out there as an open item, and I was just looking for direction, or it can sit one or the other.
Well, I'll speak, I think in the past year or so, we have cut our non-departmental spending. I think we need to continue to do that. And that's my personal opinion. If the other council members think that way, I think we should give some notice to the agencies involved, because at this time, so they can adjust their budgets for that. We may want to put this on the work session agenda and pick out some agencies that we are thinking about cutting, if we're thinking about cutting any, and give them that notice, if the other council members are inclined to think that way. I know a couple of you told me you're inclined that way. What do you want to do, council? You want to put it on the work session, or do you want to do anything?
I think we should.
I think we should put it on the work session.
Val?
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not sure what you're asking, but
We have, the town has, over the past time that I've been on town council, have cut our non-departmental
Right.
expending. And if you're inclined to do that, I think to continue to do that, I think that we should notify the agencies that we intend on making the cuts, so they can adjust their budgets, that we're
Fine.
considering that.
fine, yeah, put it on the agenda.
Okay. Would you put that on the work
Thank you,
session
sir.
agenda?
Thank you for your help.
Does that get you what you need, Tony?
Yeah, you've got it coming up on the next work session,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll dispose of it then.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mayor, and if I could ask for an order change, if it'd be appropriate. I've got Mr. Bell here also for the noise ordinance piece.
Okay,
And I know that's third on the agenda, but
well, let's take it up now.
I would appreciate it. Get him out of here.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes.
I'm taking money out of his pocket right now, so. And I think Ms. Patterson asked for this to be on there for discussion.
You go ahead, I'm not sure
You don't know what I
in
want, do
particular
you?
you have to discuss. discuss, but I'm happy to discuss it with you.
You want me to start driving the horse and you follow along from the cart? All right. Okay.
I might step to the side.
Well, it's no secret that, we've got some noise in Abingdon. And I know Abingdon's growing by leaps and bounds, and she's gonna keep growing, and that's just all there is to it. There's no, we don't want her to stop growing, I mean, yes and no, but, I think that's great. But there are, horrendous levels of noise as she grows. And when I looked at the ordinances here, I picked out some things, you know, like, section 30-32, specific prohibitions. Number 1, no motor vehicle shall be loaded with materials likely to create excessive noise. You know, like striking together and using every reasonable effort to prevent that. You have to prevent that, eliminate noise. Probably something on the muffler, but we hear a lot of backup beeps now because we're having construction in our area, in a residential area. We've had a ton of dynamite, it seems like, that blows and makes a lot of noise and disrupts a lot of citizens and residents of the certain area there around Green Spring Road. And also animals. Animals don't like dynamite. About got run over by my horse here one day when I was out, the horses out in the field, and there was a dynamite explosion out there, and the horses were near me, and they wanted to lunge forward, so I had my grandchildren out there, my daughter and myself, so that's a little dangerous. Mostly though, you're not gonna have horses out on the road. This was out in the pasture. And also blowing horns. It says here, the sounding of a horn, whistle, or signaling device in any motor vehicle. This ordinance is stating that, also that any equipment or noise-making devices should be in such manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet or more from the building which is located. Dr. Jett kind of touched on that a little bit, or Mr. Jett, sorry about that. And what all this boils down to is the ordinance time is 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. Now, I know that when I live there on that road, and I think I've at least heard dynamite at 7 o'clock at night, roughly. I'm sure there's records of what time it has happened. There's been dynamite drilling way in the hours of the evening, in the nighttime. I've seen it up on top of the hill. They have to put lights up. And I understand they're on a situation where they're trying to get this food city built. I understand that and all the other things, but it's really, it's hard to live in an area that way. You've got a lot of noise and destruction, and there's no peace and quiet. So I would like to approach the council with my idea of, and I'm not sure about now, but trying to change the time of when 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. in a residential area, it should be changed earlier, and coming it down from 11 o'clock p.m. to a different time frame and starting at 7 a.m. If you have a bed and breakfast or any other kind of business at 7 o'clock in the morning when everybody starts drilling for dynamite again, it's very annoying, especially when people are sleeping. You know, they don't want to get up on Saturday mornings and hear things like that or be waking up. And also, I think there was situations in the past, and I don't know what happened then, that when they were working on tearing the hospital down, there was a lot of beeps and noises and things within this area. So that being said, council, I'd like to talk about changing the ordinance time and maybe refining our ordinance to where it's Abingdon's growing and it's going to grow. So what are the next generation's going to have to put up with as far as noise is concerned? I'd like to be able to change that for their peace and sanity.
And Mr. Jett touched on a lot of things I agree with. Some of them were philosophical, maybe more so than legal. Mrs. Patterson touched on almost all of them. So some of them I'll address in particular, but most of the things that you're referring to are as to the projects, as I understand that they're structured now. And of course, there are overarching concerns of constitutionality of the descriptors and what is prohibited exactly and how the town enforces what those descriptors are. There are certain agreements that the town itself has entered into. There are certain agreements that other private entities have entered into themselves. So there are constitutional issues about impairments of existing contracts. The agreement, the development agreement that the town has entered into has obligated the town to lots of particular timeframes and lots of particular expenditures of monies and deadlines to be met, that I'm sure developers would say the reason that we're working all the time is to get it done within those timeframes, such that the town meets its own obligations. So it's probably at least 15-point legal discussion on top of a political and philosophical issue. The way it's written now, and there's lots of different ways to do it, but generally most of the things say excessive noise, and of course that's a very subjective phrase. There are lots of places that have them, as Mr. Jett suggested, on a decibel level, where it's an objective measurement. But for instance, while there are some restrictions on vehicles, backup warnings, for instance, in 2H, except as a danger warning. So I don't think that there's any restriction on a backup beeping, for instance. And the 11 to 7 for the operation of equipment, as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet or more from the building in which it, I'm assuming is the equipment, is located. I'm not sure that equipment in that paragraph even means vehicles. It sounds like it means some machinery in a building, and it's not supposed to put out noise more than 50 feet from it. So there are particular things about construction work, although similarly, engage in construction work in the town to excavate, demolish, or engage in the alteration or repair of any building or improvement. So does that mean only excavating, demolishing, and engaging in a building at the time? And again, the restrictions are 11 to 7. I think, and it's council's pleasure, and really more of, well, partially the issue from the other side would be, this project in particular would be, we've entered into certain agreements. We knew that these were the rules when we started. That's why we bid the way that we did. That's why you agreed to do the things that you did. And if you change it midstream, the argument I would anticipate would be that you're not being fair, that you're being arbitrary and capricious as to me by changing the time and that sort of thing, and also potentially putting the town at risk by its own agreement of not meeting the requirements that it would. So if there were an alteration to the noise ordinance in general, I would suggest a committee or something like that to look at all of it and say, is this the modern version of what the noise ordinance should say? Should there be some more restrictive, objective provisions for that? Are the hour timeframes appropriate or not? But I think it's sort of the reverse of what we would call special legislation. New special legislation is passing things for particular people to help them out. I think the opposite course would be taken in this case, that you're passing this law to penalize this particular business. And I'm sure it is messy and noisy and lots of other things on Green Spring Road every day, and will be for a little while longer. But I think that it probably would be more appropriate to address the entire ordinance as a whole, and give it some thoughtful process of what all the legal analysis would be. And like I said, just standing on my feet in front of you, I can come up with lots of arguments that I'd probably not articulate for people who might sue the town to address, but things that need to be thought through.
And I do have,
I'm just gonna say, as somebody who was here when that first noise ordinance got legs, back in 2002, 2003, you may even remember, you were still employed then. I think the original, I forget which firm we used, we may use Penn Stewart to filter all this through. I think the original design had the time at 10 p.m. as the cutoff, which from the police side I was very supportive of. But then I was directed by several council members who pointed out that, you still have restaurants open at 10 p.m. You still have, like now we have the brewery, which is open. So there is some impact, and I will say this, that was the only time I've ever sat in on drafting an ordinance. And it's appropriate, I guess, since Constitution Day was yesterday, but thinking how a bunch of guys 229 years ago could have drafted a document that's applicable today, and here we can't even get a noise ordinance the last 15 years. So they did a heck of a job, I can say that. So there are a bunch of considerations, most of which Mr. Bell mentioned, but the original design of this, and I think the one thing that still survived all the things is the ability for council to periodically, if they recognize neighborhoods that are routinely loud, to create quiet zones. Of course, that was more targeted at younger developments. If you have, let's say, college housing per se, where you have a mix of college housing and older residential homes, council could step in and say, we're going to establish a quiet zone here. I think that still survived all of the changes, and even the last revision, which was 2012, I think, or 2013. So this is not a simple task, and some localities across the state have just sort of abandoned this idea of noise ordinances, and some of them are still fighting the fight, just for what it's worth.
well, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, I appreciate your input. And I did want to recognize again and reiterate that I was talking about in the future, okay? Because I know that what is done is done. And I do want to give you a clear example, and I'm going to make this crystal clear, of excessive noise between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. where we live on Green Spring Road. Dynamite and all the other drilling is excessive, and it is very annoying, okay? I just want to make that clear. That's all I have.
Okay, council, what do you want to do?
Could Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Bell maybe come up with a recommendation for us on how to proceed and bring that to us at the next meeting?
Well, Al, I've got some thoughts on this. From what I understand and from what I've seen, our whole code of ordinances is undesirable, very undesirable. And I had a conference with Jason Boswell about this. The Carter overlay ordinance, which gives businesses fits when they try to locate in the corridors, the corridors to enter in the historic district, create all kinds of problems for them, and it hurt. In my view, it hurts our business, and I think we have a reputation of being not business friendly, and I think we need to get rid of that. So my suggestion is for this town council to commit itself to what it takes to redo the entire code of the town of Abingdon. And from what I understand, it's going to take $150,000, maybe $200,000. Is that something that you have any idea about, Cam?
Sure.
What,
It would be a big undertaking, sure.
well,
I'm not sure. I've read through the code in part. I don't know that I've sat down and read it from start to finish to say what that would take. But there are modern versions of various things, and a lot of it's going to be the input from the council as to what you would want to do with particular sections and how it would be written. Of course, it's come together to the point it is now because of various things that Mr. Sullivan and Ms. Kinsley and I go through from time to time. There was a meeting in 1993 and they decided this, and then that got carried forward, and then there was some other instance that came up, and then so you've got this mishmash of a crazy quilt of ordinances right now. So I think it would take some time to go through, certainly. It would be a big undertaking.
Well, my suggestion is that we put $100,000 in the budget for next year, and for the town council to think about and seek advice from legal counsel, how we want to prioritize which ordinances need to be looked at first, and make sure that we develop a document that doesn't have conflicting language and all that. That would take meetings of the town council, and I guess we would get other advice, but well, maybe we could get ordinances from other localities, or maybe Steve could help us. But the town council committed itself to this task and put $100,000 a year in next year's budget. And plan on $100,000 for the following year.
If you would proceed on that path, Mayor, I would obviously recommend a working group, a couple of council members.
Well, okay, that's fine. That's just the idea.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that needs to be done. It's just obviously the cost, time, I mean, and it's something that's not gonna be accomplished in a year. I mean, this is you're gonna have to look at section by section. And so, I would suggest that you do form a couple of council members on the committee to maybe work with your manager and council and a couple of the employees to focus you on certain, you mentioned zoning first, that's the overlay. That's certainly paramount.
I think we need to talk further about this, and I suggest that we put it on another work session as soon as possible.
Okay, we'll put it on. It's all right with me. What do you want to do, Al?
That's fine with me, yeah.
Donna?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, we'll put it on next month's work session? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
I appreciate
Walk
it.
home for free.
Thank you.
Mayor, you brought up something. I do want to interject, if I may. Ms. Triplett received a compliment the other day from a developer who's worked with the town for a number of years, and Tanya, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He said that the cooperation that he's received in the last 3 months from Ms. Triplett and Mr. Boswell and Matt Bolick and Tyler Bensel has been unprecedented, and this is the easiest 3 months of his entire career in dealing with the town, in the way that they came together downstairs to make getting around and getting through and understanding some of these things easier. So
Good.
Hats off to everybody who's had a hand in changing that. We appreciate what you've done.
Thank you. Okay, back to the regular agenda. Discussion regarding opening Green Spring Road and
Council member reports, item E.
council members' reports. I'm sorry. Thank you, Sam.
That's okay. Anybody have any council reports?
I don't. Sorry.
Do you have any council reports?
Well, I've been asked to consider, for the council to consider, there's an opportunity for us to acquire, and this came from Leanne Hunter Serber, superintendent of the Abingdon Muster Grounds, for us to consider a rare artifact that could be on display at the Muster Grounds. She said a Washington County, Virginia militia long rifle is currently available for purchase. This rare artifact is current for sale by Wallace Gusler, a well-respected gunsmith who is heavily involved with Colonial Williamsburg, and the asking price is $6,500.
I didn't understand. What does that have to do with a grant, Donna?
Oh, no, it's a rifle that they want to display at the Muster
Oh,
Grounds
so they want us to give them $6,500 to purchase it?
for $6,500.
Are we going down through the agenda?
Yeah, Cindy, she did it
Okay,
up
all
here,
right.
so.
Okay.
Well, let's just take it up and.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So council, what do you want to do about this?
I think I'd need more info, and it sounds like from all the budget constraints that we're already discussing, it's gonna be hard to cough up $6,500 on a whim. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yes, it's fair to say.
Chuck's back there, do we have any money in the budget for that for this year, Chuck?
There's no budget, no money in the budget specifically for that type of purchase.
So we would have to use our contingency?
You have to use your contingency or.
I remember wasn't too long ago, we were trying to scrape up enough $5,000 to make up the shortfall at the library.
At the library,
Yeah.
that's
And we were
right.
having to scratch and scrape to find that.
Right.
And we
yeah.
couldn't spend $6,000 to help Jan Hurt and Jane During with that project on the bridge, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, did I hear you correctly, it was a replica? It's a
No.
replica, or is it a
No, it's
original?
No, it's an
real.
artifact,
No, it's
yeah.
an artifact, yeah. A rare one.
What I would suggest, if I may,
Go ahead.
I would suggest that maybe Ms. Serber approach the DAR, the SAR, and the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association and ask for some monetary donations possibly to buy that gun. I know last year in the budget, we did give the museum where Ms. Serber works $1,000 for inventory, and we upped that budget this year $1,000 more dollars, so there was $2,000 in the budget for inventory that they sell out of the gift shop. So I was hoping that they could come up with that themselves. Also, maybe a fundraising opportunity might be a silent auction that any of the DAR, SAR, or Over Mountain Victory Trail Association could have to purchase, to try to gain money to purchase that rifle. A private citizen or private citizens may also make donations. So that's some of my help that I could offer.
I mean, I want to clarify. I think it's really cool. Don't get me wrong. I think that would be a really neat piece, but I just don't see me personally
It's-
with all the other
it's-
things.
Like I said earlier, it's been our policy, or not our policy, but our tradition, that we use our council contingency, if that's the only source we've got, for emergencies only. And I think it would be a good practice for this town council to follow. So I'm not in favor of that, and I like your idea, Cindy. So,
We can't vote on this or anything, so.
no, the question is, do we even want to bring it
Yeah,
up
they
to a
just
vote?
wanted us to consider it.
So do you want to, do you want to put it on the agenda to vote on it? or-
Well, I'll call her,
Okay.
just sort of tell her what we
Alright, okay.
discussed.
Tell her it is a good idea, but that's.
Well, I think they were looking at it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have something, because it was the militia from here.
Okay, Cindy, you wanted to make a statement or give us a
council
report on this?
member
Yeah,
report.
yeah.
The only thing that I have today is that I attended the 8th Annual Elected Officials Day at Feeding America, and we helped label some of the canned carrots. We did pilots of that today. We also checked out expiration dates and so forth on products. Feeding America is a really worthwhile organization that I feel that I must give you all information about volunteering. They do need volunteers there. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks have left tonight, but I was hoping I could mention this a little bit earlier, but we ran a long meeting tonight. But just for the record, Renee Cox is the volunteer service and food drive coordinator, and phone number is 276-628-9266, extension 8014. I'd just like to encourage you all, if you have time or if you know someone else that has time, to please contact Renee or go by Feeding America and offer some volunteer time if you have it.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Any other council member want to make a report?
Mayor, you still have some agenda items.
Yeah, okay.
We're almost there.
All right. Discussion regarding opening of Green Spring Road and a left turn only in a right turn lane from Cummings Street to Valley Street. Cindy, that's your item.
Yes, sir, thank you. And Mr. David Millsap did appear before us earlier during the comment time for the citizens of Abingdon. Really, what we need to do is discuss this in another work session, I believe, and, the whole council can discuss it. There's some good ideas there, and you're the expert, you know, the traffic engineer, so we need to get some information from you as well and other.
My suggestion is that we refer this to the infrastructure committee. It meets the second Wednesday. This is a highly technical issue, and I think we need input from our engineers and our traffic people in the infrastructure. And then we can put it on the next work session agenda if you want to.
All right, that sounds good to me.
Is that at Cummington Valley or Cummington Main?
Well, it's
Cummington
Cummings
Valley,
Street to Valley.
You have to turn right or left.
Yeah, from Cummings to Valley. I think she's talking
She's-
Cummings to Maine.
Cummington Main,
Yeah.
they were talking about.
What Mr. Millsap, I believe, provided for us is when you get to the double lanes on Cumming Street and you're going across Main to Valley, what I think he's talking about is
right
making
turn.
a right-hand
Right turn.
turn on Valley,
Yeah.
onto Valley from Cummings, and making a left-hand turn instead of merging those two straight up. That's what I'm understanding.
I think he was
because
talking about a dedicated turn
Turn lane.
at Cummings and Maine.
Cummings and
Cummington
Maine,
Main, that's what I thought.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
That's a highly technical issue, so let's refer that to the infrastructure
I
committee.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Fine.
And, okay, discussion, you've already done the noise ordinance?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Anything else?
You still have number 4, which, you know,
I-
that's a residual. I don't know if you.
I just wanted to,
Okay, so-
I just wanted to say that we had Mr. Dr. Benson here, and he's not here tonight, and I was wanting to know if the council wanted to put this on the work session next time, but I don't think we're ready for it, because we haven't heard from him. Or unless you want to put it on there. I think all he wanted was to be able to do a homestay 365 days a year in residential zones, and, you know, I'm not in favor of that, but somebody needs to tell Mr. Benson to talk with Jason, because he can get 365 days a year, I think, in the zone that he's in. Is that correct? So, you know, I don't really know what the problem is. I was hoping he'd be here. But,
Can we contact Mr. Benson, or does he need to contact us?
well, one of us could do it, whoever brought it up. Maybe we can send him an email.
So it's tied to the zoning?
What?
The homestay ordinance is tied to the zoning of the property? Now, I know about the historic district is a little bit related, but are the other zoning districts?
The bed and breakfast, you can have,
That's what I thought.
Jason, would you come up here and make sure we understand
Please, sir.
clearly this?
Straighten us out, Dave.
Yes.
I'll try to be brief.
Please.
The homestay is not tied to zoning. That's what makes it unique, is it's not tied to zoning. I think the gentleman that you were referring to is sitting right back here.
Oh, okay, I didn't recognize
Yes,
that.
he wants to do the homestay, but there are other options available to
Right.
him from the zoning,
Right.
such as a tourist home or a boarding house. So there are options available to you. Well, I'll get with you after this, and you and I can have a discussion.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you, Dr.
We'll try to
Benson.
get him straight.
You were
now.
all dressed up last time.
Brenner.
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 Dr.
Brenner.
Brenner.
Okay,
But I'll get with Dr. Brenner. and
Okay.
We'll try to get him straightened out.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we done now?
No, sir.
Have I messed it up again?
You packed an October work session full, and you haven't given us the date yet.
Okay, Council.
I'll let y'all go home when you let me know when you're coming back in October.
When do you want to have an October work session?
I want one of all.
What are we thinking, middle of the month again?
Well, your council meeting is on the 4th, right? Yeah, council meeting is on the 4th of October, which is a Thursday, at 7:15. So you try to stick to the middle of the month, so depending on how you look at it, you can say anything through the 15th to the 18th.
I will be gone that week.
Okay, that's a good time to schedule it.
Yay!
You're free to go.
Won't break my heart.
Okay. What about the 26th through the 25th, or the 26th?
26th is a Friday. I don't know if you want to spend your Friday night here.
What about the 25th?
I'm good.
25th?
Are you good, Donna?
Kim, when is the regular council meeting?
October the 4th.
Does that give you enough time? We set the agendas, does that give you enough time?
Yes, sir.
And the 25th is what day?
It's on a Thursday, the last Thursday in the month.
Okay.
All
Does
right,
that suit everybody?
No,
It doesn't suit you?
no, Thursday is not a good day for me.
Thursday's not a good day.
Unless
You've
we
told
do it-
us that before, and I
Unless we
forgot
do it
about
early.
Let's do it early. Let's do it earlier than 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Y'all wanna do like 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock suits me.
Right.
Cause that's a day I'm off, if
Donna?
that's okay with you guys.
Ms. Quetch had some issues.
Wow, I don't know.
Is that a Wednesday, and you don't like Wednesdays, I remember?
No, like
That's a
Wednesday.
It's a Thursday.
Thursday.
2 o'clock.
If you teach
Yeah.
me how to press shirts,
I
I'll
did
go. I know-
300 today.
Bless your heart.
300, but a machine, actually operating machine. Yeah. All right, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock Thursday.
Hopefully I'll
The
have somebody
25th.
by then.
Okay.
Oh, Lord, what a day.
Think about that big check you get, Woody.
Yeah, it's a whopper.
50 cents an hour.
All right, Tony, now you back checking me, is that everything, or you got more?
I think that the only thing I do want to hand out is, Mrs. Patterson asked prior to the meeting if they had any information on crashes in regards to the streets in question. Lieutenant Holbrook loves crash data, and so, this is just a listing. Now, this goes back to September of 2013. If you just take one and pass it down here again, that's just a little chart showing the crashes that we've had on the streets in question, or in relation to the streets in question for the one-way proposal piece.
Thank you, Officer Holbrook, for your hard work.
Can we nickname him Crash Holbrook?
Crash Holbrook, yeah, I think that's good.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, we may not, the clerk's pointing out that we may not have the mandatory advertisement time to advertise the Summers property for sale between today and the meeting on the 4th. We have to have 2 full calendar weeks, and we're not gonna make it. So,
So would we table that to the next month then?
we could table that public hearing on the sale till November, and I know we're pushing it out, but,
We don't have much of a choice, do we?
we're,
No, I don't-
well, we've got,
Unless you wanna
A
change the date of the
special
council
meeting.
meeting,
What
you
about-
can do that, but what do you all wanna do? You wanna change the date of the October council meeting, or do you wanna put
I
this on?
I don't think I'd change the date of the meeting at this
Okay,
point, because
okay,
you're not,
all right.
I think we deliberated on that date for a while,
Do
didn't we?
that?
yeah, I mean, you could always, we could advertise the called meeting if you chose to do that, but we would have to determine the date today to get that, in the paper, to meet the required advertisement time.
Is there any reason we shouldn't, is there any reason not to postpone it to November instead of having a special meeting? Do you think it, what's your pleasure?
It's just, I mean, I didn't wanna drag anybody on, but that's, I understand.
Can we advertise it for that work session we just set up and do it then?
You can't make a decision in
You'd
one
have-
session.
Why not? Who says,
You can't
where is
make
it written?
decisions.
You'd have to make that a called meeting.
Yeah,
Well-
you do a call meeting prior to the work session.
You could do a called meeting and.
Well, we could do that.
There you go.
I was thinking about just a call meeting, so. that
We can have a call
everyone's-
meeting prior to the
Since we'll be
work
here
session.
anyways.
Hey, that's a good idea.
Well, the one way to skin that
Oh,
cat.
wait a minute, I came up with that idea.
Oh, all right, good idea, Cindy.
Cindy's idea.
Called meeting prior to the work
Yeah,
We're,
session.
we're all together, you
For the
know.
purpose of the
You
public
just
hearing.
don't listen.
How's
I
that?
don't listen to my wife either, so
Should we do that at 1 o'clock?
why should I listen to my sister?
What time do y'all wanna do that?
What day?
You wanna start that at 1, or you wanna start it at 2
Just
and
leave
then
it at
just
2.
follow it by
Just leave it at 2.
the meeting,
Leave it at 2.
and then
the work session after?
Work session following?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
would you
The
repeat
Public
that,
hearing won't last
please?
very long.
Yes, sir.
Would you repeat
Now-
that, please? What date and what year? I mean, I know it's
just-
18, but
Can,
what
can I
month?
insert something? I wanna
Yes.
muddy the water more.
Yes.
All right.
Sitting in a different position, I recalled council taking some criticism about having public meetings and public comment periods when times people were available. You're talking about having a public hearing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday when most people are at work. I don't wanna muddy the water, but I don't want you to get trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we,
Well, let's just
we've
make it at
had-
6
Another
o'clock.
day.
We could do it at 5. If you wanna move the meeting like at 3, do the work session, then go into the public hearing at 5 or so.
Yeah.
That's fine, but I have to be out here at 8 o'clock.
well,
We
the public
shouldn't
hearing
take
is not
that
gonna
long.
last very long. Why don't we do it at,
Look at this one. Hell, what time did we get here for this meeting?
7, no, was it 7?
5:30, but you also
5:30.
had public
Well,
comment.
no,
Oh, yeah.
now, really, I mean, if you wanted to move your next work session time back, instead of 2, move it to 4,
Yeah.
and then have your called meeting immediately thereafter, it would give
Yeah.
people time, you're past that 5
That's
o'clock
fine.
hour.
is that all right, Donna?
That's fine.
Okay.
It's better.
You know, and I'm,
Okay,
and
thank
quite
you
honestly,
for-
I just wanna make sure
We don't
that-
wanna be
I
criticized
don't wanna-
anymore.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Great.
But
Okay,
what time
repeat.
are we now?
4 o'clock,
4 o'clock on the 25th.
25th.
And then we're doing the special called meeting at 5, is that
On the
correct?
I would advertise that for 5:30,
5:30, okay.
to allow people time to get here if they wanted to
So
come.
4 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Work session.
4 PM work session. And then 5 PM is the
5:30.
call
5:30.
session. Could someone get in touch with Mr. Dutcher and Ms. Gill?
We will put a notice out also, and it will be in the paper, public notice also that will.
Okay, guys, we got everything covered?
I'm
Tony,
not saying anything.
Kim, Cindy?
Mr. Mayor, how long is it gonna be before we just decide to have 2 meetings a month?
What do you mean?
Instead of 1 meeting a month, we need to have 2 meetings a month. How long are we gonna wait till we do that?
2 council meetings?
Yeah.
I'll give, not that I have a dog in this fight, but I'll give Mr. Bradley credit. I know, you all have a lot on your plate, and you're having long meetings. I think, and, the decision-making has slowed down due to discussion. I think Mr. Bradley's idea is definitely worth merit, that you go to 2 a month. That's just my thoughts.
And the work sessions too, also?
I think you could get by with 1 work session, but you do 2 meetings.
You wanna put it on the work session agenda? We'll talk about it.
There's another work session.
2 meetings a month, no longer than 30 minutes each.
I'm gonna get a room here at the town hall. I'm gonna stay here, and I'll be working, while
Lord
everybody
have
else is
mercy.
working somewhere else.
Like I said, 2 meetings a month.
Did you say adjourn?
I guess we're adjourned.
Adjourn!